Healing Path. I'm Laura Donnelly, founder of the Healing Path Conversation Series and Dancing with Ease Body Brain Balance. People hire me to teach them to move out of pain and into healing. These conversations with friends and colleagues offer many perspectives on healing. And one of the main things that they have in common is that my guests and I understand the concept that healing begins inside ourselves with a decision to heal, and then it expands outward from there. Whether we choose traditional medicine, alternative medicine, self-care, or just learning, taking different workshops, things like that, you're the person who decides what is healing for you. So today, my guest is Jason Jurado, and I'm just very excited to have you meet him and hear a little bit about his perspective on how we can work with our unconscious mind to change habits and patterns that we're ready to let go of. Hi, Jason.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad you could come on and talk today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I have to say that my world is there's two worlds, and I'm bringing them together. But I usually live in one world more than the other. Let's say, and to actually be talking about the H word, healing, with you is very exciting. I live in somewhat of a pragmatic, science-based, neurolinguistics, and I'll give my introduction here in a second. But I just wanted to say that it's really important that to be able to conversation about healing and about how we can help others find it within themselves. Like I always say, I'm a tour guide. I don't do anything to anyone. I'm just a tour guide to help them on their journey. But to be talking about that healing journey is pretty exciting.
I'm so glad. I'm glad it's a step on the path for you, right? I mean, this is how it seems to me, is that each person heals themselves, and in that healing inspires other people to take care of themselves and
Yeah,
take their journey to healing.
that's so true.
So, and and science, I mean, science is not necessarily not about healing,
Right. Of course.
but it can seem it can seem well, I was going to say linear and boxy. It can seem confining, which is one of the things about neurolinguistic programming that I really like. It seems that it unravels some of the boxes that we create around ideas for ourselves.
Yes, inductive thinking for sure is coming from within and going without is a huge part of how we train and then how we help people for sure.
Awesome. Well, please share a little bit about your how you came to, stumbled on, decided to study neurolinguistic programming and the other things that you do.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I really, for me, it starts in the beginning. And I shared this story with someone the other day, and they reminded me that just like you had said, sometimes by sharing our story, we help others along their journeys. And so I think it's important to kind of share my story along those lines. I've always been a healer from my earliest age. That's just who I've been. It's in my blood. It's who I am. Unfortunately, for different reasons, it wasn't something that was talked about. It wasn't something that I was mentored in. So the world that I kind of lived in but didn't understand scared me. And so I pushed it away for many years. And from whatever I saw, whatever I heard, we all have our talents and our attributes. But things came up as a small child, and I just kind of pushed it away because it scared me because I didn't really understand it. So, but as I went through my life, I was always the friend that people came to for help. I was always the one people could come talk to. I was the one that could either give advice or just give an ear and listen and just be present for the person. I learned that we call it that now, but at the very young age, that's just what I knew to do, is just be there for the people. And so I went through my younger years just kind of dealing with it in that sense, but also always being the helper, always being the one to assist people along their journeys. And I had my own journey as well, and it helped me deal with it too. Um, and then I picked up at a very young age a meditation practice. I was into martial arts, and I read a black belt magazine one time, and it had what we now refer to as box breathing. And it was just a quick, simple exercise for people. And I was like, oh, I'll try this. I was like 7, 8 years old. And so I started, unbeknownst to me, meditating. And that kind of became part of who I was as well, and learning mindfulness and stuff as long as I was at that age too. Got out of high school, graduated when I was 17, went in the Marine Corps, lived that journey. That's another journey. Still helping my friends out. Still, that's the military is a definite different experience. Um, was able to travel the world. Went to Japan, spent a year in Japan. Was able to further my practices along those lines. Got out of the Marine Corps, and like we all do, that calling was always there, but I still never answered it. And what do? You go to work, you get a job, we figure it out. We don't have that direction sometimes. We don't have that mentorship, as I was saying earlier. So for brevity, I'll kind of cut it a little bit shorter, because I was 23, and I'll turn 51 tomorrow, or in the next couple of days. So there's a few years in my journey. Went through my life, went through my journey, and then around the year 2000, I was like, I need a toolbox. I need something to put this into. I need a way to translate who I am and what I can do to help people, and have a definitive way to do that. So I started looking at different modalities, and I started just kind of, looking at what was for me, what fit for who I was. And I came across neurolinguistics, NLP, and it just fit. And it was kind of a Cinderella story. I looked at a bunch of different trainers, and there was trainers that were highly technical that actually helped design NLP from the beginning. Robert Dilts, he's amazing. I've actually trained with him a little bit, but he's very technical. And I was like, well, that's not so much what I'm looking for. And then there's like Richard Bandler, who's one of the designers. There's two that are given credit for designing NLP. And Richard's great at what he does. He's an amazing person to help people, but he was not as technical as I was looking for. Richard is people that just can do, but teaching was sometimes he was teaching by example. And for me, I was like, I need a little bit more training than that. And then I found the Tad James School, and Tad really kind of blended the two for me, and it worked for me. Everyone has their style. So I started studying NLP at that point, reading books, looking at stuff online, and just kind of self-learning. That's how the journey begins for a lot of us, right? We take that first step within. Jump ahead to 2010. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something with this. It's now time. My wife was like, you have a mission, you have a calling, you should go after it. So she's been my best supporter through all of this. And I went and got my practitioner training in NLP, and then hypnosis, and a thing called timeline therapy. The interesting thing is that that's the 3 certificates you get with the schooling. And I was like, hypnosis, even though one of the things that was modeled for NLP was hypnosis, I really wasn't called to it. It wasn't something that I really knew much about. I wasn't really aware of it. Well, now it's my go-to. Now it's really, I'm very passionate about hypnosis, because, working with the unconscious mind, which we're going to talk about today, is so powerful. Anyway, didn't do much with it. I kept working. I was working in a position to where I was able to mentor and help people. So I was still able to fulfill that part of me a little bit. 2015, I decided I'm going to get my Master Practitioner. It was that I need a little more knowledge. Sometimes we doubt ourselves. I need a little more knowledge to help people. And I went and got my Master Practitioner in neurolinguistics, hypnosis, and timeline therapy. And at that point, I started seeing clients. And then I saw clients part-time for about 7 years. And then just last year, I went full-time seeing clients on my business.
So what changed in your life for you personally as you continue to study and learn how to do NLP? But I'm sure, like, also in the training that you worked with partners and on
Right.
each other. And my experience is that when I entered a program similar to that really what's happening is I was healing myself,
Right.
in order to be able to know in my body how the techniques I was learning filter through, how they, not that I'm the same as everybody else, but, oh, this takes a certain amount of time. this when this happens really fast, then people need to pause and integrate, and different techniques are different. So do you have some moments that you would like to share about learnings for yourself that were like maybe something you always knew, and suddenly it's like bing, it really rings true?
Yeah, and it's basically what you just said. You know, I've always it's there's knowledge and there's wisdom, and throughout my life, I had a knowing that I was meant for something. I had a knowing that I was meant to do other things, but it never really was like I never took it to my heart. And it was never something, it was always something that I pushed, because I said I started pushing it away from a very young age. And I was scared kind of what I saw and what happened and things of that nature. But even though it was my calling, it was we could talk about later, we can talk about towards and away from goals. And what was truly pulling me, was I going towards that, or was I just going away from not doing it to an extent? And when I went through my training, you get free coaching, free whatever you want to call it, within your practice, because you're doing these procedures and these processes with other people. But seeing like the first person truly shift, like having these new tools and helping somebody and watching them change their life to an extent, that was the bell. That was the okay. Now, yes, nothing else mattered at that point. It was really all the doubt, all the nervousness, all of the unsure thoughts were gone when that moment, because it just rang true for me. And that was, during that process, when you have that first client, so to speak, it just opened me up and said, yes, I'm home.
Awesome. Awesome. So you mentioned towards something or away from something. I mean, isn't that kind of how humans function? I'm either going towards this thing that I want, or I'm going away from this thing that I don't want. It's not how we function all the time, but kind of a basic response to the world.
Very true. And the concern with that is that um, when I work with people dealing with goals per se, or we talk about, we're talking about health and healing. I don't want to be sick anymore, right? How often is that said? I don't want to feel bad anymore. That's an away from goal. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to breathe the way I do. I want to be able to walk a mile, something that's positive. So, as an example that we use a lot in NLP, it's because we talk about money, because that's something that the world we live in, right? Are you going towards looking for abundance and money, or are you going away from poverty? And the easiest way to explain that, the way it works, is that if I'm going, let's start with away, because that's what we don't want. We're going to end where we do want, right? That's always the best.
Yep.
So if I'm facing towards abundance and wealth and money, but I'm truly walking away from poverty that's behind, let's say behind me, as I go forward towards that abundance, when I get far enough away from that poverty, so I have an extra $100 in my pocket, I can pay all my bills and be able to go out to dinner, whatever that looks like for you. I get far enough away from poverty, I'm going to stop, right? I've achieved that because now I'm far enough away from what I'm going away from, to where it doesn't burn as much. It's not as what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't bother me to that extent.
It's not so uncomfortable
Thank you.
or so
Yes,
frightening.
exactly. And I can process it, and it's okay. But then I stop short of reaching the abundance. If I want to make $100,000 a year, but I'm going away from poverty, when I make that 50 or 60 as an example, you know what? That's comfortable enough. And I stop. But if I'm going towards that abundance, if I'm going towards that 100,000, I'm not going to stop until I get that 100,000. So just as with health, if I'm going away from not feeling bad and I have a good day, we've all been in those positions and we've been around people that have had not so positive health, and they'll tell you, "Oh, it's a good day today. I'm having a good day." But you're not where you're at where you want to be. And so that would be how that would combine.
So I have a question about going towards something in terms of the energy of abundance.
Right.
And I think it's kind of good to talk about this because where we are right now, especially in the world, is this kind of compression
Right.
around financial security
Right.
because of all of the upheavals in the past couple of years. And so, do you think it's important to have a specific goal, like you had just pulled some stuff out of your hat, like $100,000,
Right.
or can somebody have? I'm thinking more like the well-being feeling of abundance, and having that kind of showered in that feeling of ease and joy and plenty. Are those good enough goals, or do you feel like somebody needs to have a financial target?
I think and that's a great question, because I think it depends on what your goal is. If I'm working with someone as a coach and they're looking for monetary goals, business goals, even if it's like a family goal, I want to achieve this, I want to have that. Yeah, we want to be very specific when we set that goal. Very specific, and then also we want to have a very clear picture of how we know we have that goal. So there's that to that. At the same time, and this is what I was talking about earlier about there's the heart and the science between what I do. The hard fact is, yes, we believe in having very detailed, very specific goals. The SMART goals, if you're familiar with the SMART.
Oh, yeah, but I resist that kind of specificity in my life
Okay.
personally
Right.
because oh, no, that's interesting, because I don't want to miss the spontaneous arrival of something. So then am I not going towards a specific goal because I'm afraid of missing something? Or do I have a different way of framing a goal besides this specific thing? So
Right.
this is interesting. See, I love talking to people. I always learn something.
Something to where, and this is where I've stolen this is a saying from somebody from a different avenue, but there's levels to this, I think. And I think when I work with clients and I have these conversations with people, you have to have a lot of rapport, and you have to know where they're at and what they're open to hearing. Because when I work with clients, I believe in having smart, specific goals and have that when I'm working at that coaching level. When we're talking about life, one of the people that he's passed, and I think a lot of people know him, Wayne Dyer. I consider him a mentor. I never got to meet him, but I read a lot of his books and watch his videos, and I listen to his audiobooks probably at least once a month. Um, he talks about, you set the intention. What do you want to achieve? What do you truly want in life? And that could be a feeling like you talked about. You know, I'll paraphrase, bathing in the feelings of wellness, feeling that. You set that intention, and then you let the universe work out the details. So, at a higher spiritual level, I believe in that as well. I'm with you. When we start off and we're looking at goal setting, though, I start off with those specific measurable things, always towards, because your intention is going to be a towards intention as well. You're not going to set an intention of, or you shouldn't set an intention of, well, I don't want to feel bad anymore, right? Your intention is going to be something that's positive that you can see and go towards.
I find this also works like with people. Sometimes I'm working with dancers who are, food conscious and everything, and they are apt to say, "Well, I have to cut X, Y, and Z out of my diet altogether."
Right.
And I'm like, okay, as that's an idea, but that's a big idea. What is your first step?
Right.
What if you want to cut out all sugar. Okay, that's cool. But what if you just switch from candy bars and chocolate
Right.
to fruit and juice, so that you change your body's processing of sweet stuff, and you start to move gradually, and so then you can look at the other things that you have and use, and where the sweetness comes into your life. Oh, that's the other thing. What is the sugar for?
Right.
Is it for the sugar, or is it because it symbolizes some kind of a sweetness, which is, again, that those two levels that you're talking about.
For sure. Yeah.
And it's very interesting. So, like, and I think the measurable part is really important, because it's so easy, even when people are making changes going towards where they want to go, they forget. They forget to celebrate. I mean, even the smallest thing, even it seems like nothing to people when their whole goal is to eliminate sugar completely from their diet. Oh, now I'm about to eliminate. Hang on, I got to plug in my computer. I thought I did that, but that gave me the low battery warning. How wonderful. Talking of sugar and energy.
Energy, yeah, for sure. Yes.
But this idea of just choosing to have a piece of fruit 3 times a day instead of a hard candy. People can say, "Well, that I didn't do anything." Well, you did. You made a huge mental shift. But it doesn't get like, and I'm thinking now about this, the unconscious thing. The unconscious piece for me with sugar was sweetness in my life. Who brought sweetness into my life?
Right.
And and when they left, did I substitute actual sugar
Right.
for that energy? And so it's a interesting it's interesting too how the mind hides things from us,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
information
Yeah.
doesn't come up instantly, right? It doesn't come up all at, well, never. Yes, sometimes it just comes all pouring up like a volcano.
An epiphany, right? It just shows up.
Right.
We talk in NLP about surface structure and deep structure, like of language. So the sweetness is the surface structure. That's, oh, sweetness. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. But what's the deep structure? What does sweetness really mean to you? Something else we're talking about healing, and we don't have time to get into today, but metamedicine. Metamedicine talks about how our bodies reflect on our emotions. And Louise Hay talked about it, and Serge Kahili King and Huna talks about it. It's a wide thought process. But when you talk about diabetes, we look at the sweetness of your life, whether something's missing that's the sweetness of your life, or something that's too sweet in your life, and that's where we look at for when we would talk about the unconscious mind, and I think that's very important. And you mentioned the unconscious mind, and I just want to mention real quick the conscious mind, unconscious mind. Sometimes people don't realize they have an unconscious mind. Um,
Sorry.
Dr. Milton Erickson, Ericksonian hypnosis, he said patients are patients because they're out of rapport with their unconscious mind, and that's a lot of what I
That's
deal with.
beautiful.
Yeah,
That's a beautiful statement.
and that reflects, so when I usually talk with new clients, when I'm doing with hypnosis or whatever, we talk about the unconscious mind because that's where a lot of my work takes place. Is so who is if you're not aware of your unconscious mind, who was breathing for you last night when you slept? Who's running your body right now while we're talking? Who knows, who's got that blueprint of perfect health? Who knows how much to process up through your liver or through your kidneys? Your unconscious mind is running all that. It's also the place of emotions too. So it's all tied together. But being aware of your unconscious mind is something that I really work with people on because that's where change happens.
And I think that's really powerful. And we forget how much is happening all the time. You know, um, I don't have to help my body digest food.
Right.
Mostly, I don't have to help it digest.
Right.
Sometimes I need to give it the right substances. Um,
Right. There's an awareness for sure. Mental. Yeah.
but the okay, so the first thing is to just kind of like, and I'm sure you have some clients that are just kind of like, well, I was laughing because like who was breathing for you last night?
Right.
It's so beautiful,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, and then what's like the next step in becoming aware of things from your unconscious mind? Once we take that first level of body management, body functioning, basic, moving the blood back and forth from the heart and all.
Right.
And then, let's see, sorry. I have to, thoughts.
Right.
Where do thoughts come from? And do they jump over the wall from the unconscious mind based on emotions into the conscious mind?
Yeah. That's the other test I give is I always say, I say, think of a phone number from when you were a kid, a house where you lived at, or your house number, and then what is it? And for me, I always use my mom's. It's no longer there because mom's passed, but 835-2612. And I'm like, where was that number right before I asked you? You weren't consciously thinking 835-2612, 835. It was somewhere. It's in your unconscious mind. It's storing those memories. It stores it for you. And when you call it up, it comes up to you. And I don't think of it as a wall so much as, there's a little bit of a pathway, and it just says, okay, and it's here to the unconscious mind wants to serve us. You know, we say that you treat it like a 4-year-old child. That's how you talk to it, that's how you interact with it, and that's how you treat it. And so we're really negative sometimes with our unconscious mind. And just think if you were saying what you say to a 4-year-old child, and sometimes what we say to ourselves.
Oh,
So
that's so true. But in terms of kindness to ourselves, I put your website up there.
thank you.
It was, I love this software. It makes everything look cool. But anyway, the it's so easy to be mad at ourselves and to criticize ourselves. And in the work that I do has to do with paying attention to your body. And as soon as I think I'm not good enough, I did something wrong, my whole body pulls in tighter. My voice gets tight. I can't breathe as deeply.
Right.
You feel that whether you're aware of feeling it or not. We transmit that tension into the world, and it doesn't make the mistake go away. The mistake has already happened.
Right.
And so the beating up is like continuing the mistake further and further into the future. So this kind of kindness and exploration, I find exploration, like where was that phone number? That's kind of interesting.
Right.
And the fact that I can't remember other phone numbers. I can remember my first phone number um, early on in my life, my house. But now from cell phones, I can hardly remember any phone number.
Right.
I can remember my own for some reason, but where did all those other phone numbers go? Well, I guess to the bottom of the
Yes.
pile
Yeah.
because I didn't need them. I didn't call them forward. Um, and it's very funny. And then to think like there's this giant storehouse. Actually, I did tell some students once, they were wanting to know about teaching and how to make exercises. And I said, I've been dancing my whole life. And I said, there's like a giant sock behind me. It's huge. It extends out invisible, of course. Thank God. I look really funny with that. But
Right.
when I'm teaching class and I look at the students and I see this student struggling with something, it's almost like I can reach back in this sock and grab the exact exercise or something a teacher told me that really helped me and bring it forward and share it with them. And that's that kind of spontaneous healing that it's the right thing at the right time. And I think that the sock is like my visual image of the unconscious.
Right. It works in symbols. Yeah, the unconscious mind works in symbols, and that's perfect. That's great. Yeah. Something I want to mention talking about the science of it as well. So we have a ton of information coming at us at all times. We have millions and millions of bits of information, color, sight, sound, all of our senses, right? At all times. The unconscious mind can process 11 million bits per second of information.
Oh my gosh.
Your conscious mind can process 50. So, so you can imagine what's in your unconscious mind that's not in your conscious mind. And to your point, I think it's called primacy. That's how the science shows that what we focused on first is what the first memory that we recall. And then what was in our area that we kind of saw, but we didn't really focus on, that's what recalls next. And then something in our area that we weren't paying attention to, but we could still see with our senses or still experience with our senses, we still saw that to an extent, but it's harder to recall. And that's why hypnosis works so well, because hypnosis works with the unconscious mind and it unlocks that. And you're able to find things that your conscious mind can't pull up in the card catalog, so to speak. And same thing with healing. The unconscious mind has a blueprint of perfect health, and you can't just think be better,
No.
right?
It would
Wouldn't
be
it be
nice,
nice? You
but we
know,
can't really. Yeah.
don't be angry. Nope. There's more to it.
And just one of the things I tell people, even after they learn a few things, a few techniques, is expect to fail, expect to make mistakes, expect to
Mm-hmm.
fall off the wagon. The healing really happens when we come back to ourselves, come back to consciousness, come back to our intention to take care of ourselves better, or to do some eat better, to do a healing thing, to change our response, right? I mean, like, we're going to get angry, but
Yeah.
I don't have to scream and yell just because I'm angry.
Right.
I need to know I'm angry. I need to not pretend like I'm not angry.
Right. Don't suppress it. Yeah.
but I don't have to hurt somebody or myself with my anger. Like when I was young, once I kicked a wall. That is not smart for a dancer.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really not smart for a dancer.
Yeah.
So if people were going to start on this path of, you did kind of get them to start to think about their unconscious mind, but
Right.
like a first step to opening this door, what would you recommend? A book to read, a practice to do, a self kind of a noticing in your daily life?
The one thing, and I just want to real quick, I just want to jump back because it's a cute little story. I went to a retreat. My wife and I went to a retreat with Dan Millman, Peaceful
Oh,
Where,
nice. Nice.
and
Oh,
yeah,
jealous.
yeah,
Jealous.
that was pretty amazing. We spent a week, 30 of us, about 30 of us, spent a week with Dan in Costa Rica. So it was pretty amazing. But he taught us to juggle, and it wasn't about teaching us to juggle, but we got limes. And the first thing we did is we all got our 3 limes. We stood back in line, and he said, "Okay, drop them." And so, all those limes, 90 limes, went fall into the floor. And he said, "Okay, we got that out of the way. Now you know it's okay to drop them. Now pick them up and let's learn how to juggle."
Yes. Fear of
So
failure, right?
right, so things are going to come up, things are going to happen. The one thing so I would say there's a lot to it. Obviously, there's a lot, but to start off, the one thing that I teach all of my clients when I first start with, and the one thing that I would share today is focus, because what you focus on is what shows up in your life. And if you're focusing on what you want, that's going to show up. If you focus on what you don't want, guess what? It's going to show up. More of
That
what you
is
don't want.
that is so important to learn.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Sometimes I talk in my classes about how we learn things that are actually backwards. So we are taught in school and everything, identify the problem, find a solution, implement the solution. But once you've identified the problem, you're in that place where you're focusing on the thing that's wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not that things are not wrong. It's not that you ignore the things that are wrong,
Mhm.
but they seem less when you focus on the things that are going well.
Right. It's mindset. It's really mindset. Yeah, you focus on what you do want, and when the things that you don't want show up, you just acknowledge them. You know, in meditation, what do we say when those thoughts come in? You know, there's two things where you treat them like clouds and they just float through the sky. Um, Wayne Dyer used to say when a negative thought came into his head, he would say next, like
Right.
like you're turning a page in a book. Next. So it's dealing with those things that show up in life because things, you know, rain does show up. I love rain, but you know what I mean. Things do show up in your life that aren't the greatest, and then it's how you process that, and you don't focus on it. You say, okay, I acknowledge it. It's like you were talking earlier about emotions, and you know, somatics. You talk about Stephen Gilligan talks about saying welcome when you have a negative emotion because it's part of you and it's giving you a message, and so you say welcome. What are you trying to tell me? And you sit with that and you're like, okay. And that's being in touch with your unconscious mind again. But yeah, so focus is so important. Focus on what you do want. And then once again, for the scientific folks out there, reticular activating system, the RAS. It's a group of neurons at the base of our brainstem, and it actually gets programmed to look for what you want. So the more you focus on what you want, it just will scientifically start to show up in your life. You'll start to see it, and then you see it, and you're like, oh, there it
There it
is.
is.
Yeah. So first session with everybody, I always end it with, from now until the next session, I want you to focus on what you do want. And if you start thinking about what you don't want, acknowledge it, thank it for coming up, and then switch your mindset to what you do want. So changing that focus to what you do want, especially with health, that's very positive.
Awesome. Well, it just is so fun to talk to you. I'm so glad that we met. And
Yes, me too.
in the copy under the video will be how to reach you, your website here, that is this. And we met on LinkedIn, I think, through Biz
Yeah.
Catalyst
Mhm.
and sharing ideas. I mean, this is my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's
And
been great.
I really appreciate it. And you mentioned something earlier. We didn't have time to go into it. Louise Hay and something. Maybe we'll have another conversation
It'd be great.
about that whole aspect of healing. This would be
Yeah,
delightful.
it'd be great.
So thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing. And I'm just really happy to have had this time together to chat with you. And I will look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much.